hundreds of millions or billions of people get a high bandwidth interface to their digital treasury self, their AI self, effectively, then that seems like that probably leads to a better future for humanity. Um, so I'm getting somewhat esoteric, but hopefully some of this is making sense. And like I said, it's a long shot. But what I find interesting is that I've not found any human who wishes to delete either their cortex or their limbic system. I suspect nobody in this room wants to do that. So roll
Or their cell phone.
Sorry?
Or their cell phone.
Well, no, I have people who don't use a cell phone. It's rare. Okay.
Well, I confess, for years I avoided this, and I avoided it. I didn't even have, not only did I not have a cell phone within my immediate radius, I didn't have a television set. My phones were 35-year-old phones because I was Prime Minister of Israel, and I knew what this means. Okay, I mean, maybe your audience doesn't know, but we knew. Now, having spent some time in the opposition, I lapsed into the use of the cell phone, and I find it very hard to dissociate for the reasons that you said. It's become an extension of, a repository of memory, the ability to get information very fast, which you say correctly is very slow. Very slow, but
yes.
compared to what it was before.
Yes,
Remember, you had research assistants, they have to go to libraries, things like that. Where's that? That's gone. But this will be seen as very vastly primitive compared to what you're talking about, Elon.
Yeah, I'll just add something to that, and go to Max. But I mean, it's sort of a funny thing. Like if you assume like a best case AI scenario, imagine if you're the AI and you're trying to. You just want the human to tell you what it wants. Just please spit it out. But it's speaking so slowly, like a tree. Okay. Like trees communicate. Okay. If you watch a tree like a sped up a version of a tree growing, it's actually communicating. It's communicating with the soil. It's trying to find the sunlight. It's reacting to other trees and that kind of thing very slowly. But from a tree standpoint, it's not that slow. So what I'm saying is, we don't want to be a tree. That's the idea behind a high bandwidth neural interface is even when the AI desperately wants to do good things for us, that we can actually communicate several orders of magnitude faster than we currently can. So.
I love that you mentioned the trees there, because if anyone is still struggling to understand why it's so likely that we could get wiped out by AI, to a super intelligent AI, we are like trees. They are as much faster than us in their thinking than we are to trees. So if some trees in the rainforest are a little bit worried that some humans are going to come chop them down, and they're like, oh, don't worry, we're so smart, we'll stop those humans. Yeah, good luck with that, right? I love how you went philosophical here and talked about what it means to be human, and I wanted to follow up on that. And then
but before that, maybe just continue that. Okay, so how you're assuming that the danger of human extinction is that you have super intelligent machines that outpace humans by orders and orders of magnitude, who will not necessarily value the continued human existence as we know it, and basically program us out. That's basically what you're saying.
So if we were to be so dumb as to create entities that are much more powerful than us that don't share our goals, yeah, that's a really bad idea. I mean, in Israel, I think you understand really, really well that if you have a bunch of other beings who are intelligent and don't share your values, it can go really badly, right? And let's not make that mistake by giving too much power to machines that don't share our values. But of course, we can tackle that in various ways. So coming back to what can we concretely do, I just want to say one thing about the philosophical point about being human. Just for myself, one of the things that I really cherish the most about being human is the agency, that I can actually make choices and make a difference. And one of the most beautiful things about what you are all doing with technology is giving us more agency. Back in the Middle Ages, when we had a life expectancy of freaking 30 years, and knowing that we might starve to death next year because of the weather, what kind of... It's so much more inspiring now that we're becoming more the captain of our own ship with technology, able to actually have more agency as a species. So I say, let's use that agency to create a wonderful future, not throw it away. And 3 things I wanted to just suggest for concrete action items we can do here. I'll say a little more about each of them. One has to do with pausing risky stuff. One has to do with controlling the machines, and one has to do with inspiration for the future. So for the controlling, we already talked quite a lot about the importance of staying in control over these machines, so I don't need to dwell on it anymore. But I think it's saying things like, oh, what is going to happen to us? Bring out the popcorn. That's too passive for me. Let's celebrate our agency and ask ourselves not what we think will happen, but what we want to happen. Yeah. And clearly, we want to control these machines. We're building them. Second thing, so I agree with Greg on many things, and I greatly respect your work. One thing where we have a friendly disagreement is, I signed this pause letter saying I think we should pause the riskiest things, and you don't. I think that it would be a good strategy for us to emulate what biotech does and just have clear safety standards. If you want to release a new drug, you can't just sell it in the supermarket. You have to do a clinical trial, persuade some experts somehow that this is safe. And I would like to see, for really high stakes, very powerful systems, some sort of system like this with standards, and then the companies it's on them to, prove that they're safe before they get released.
Who does the standard? Who makes the standard?
Well, we've solved this. It's been solved in Israel. It's been solved in the U.S. for biotech.
No, not for biotech, but here, it's a. Do you want it regulators, or do you want it legislatures? I mean, it's not the only choice, but it's a pretty clear dichotomy.
I don't think we need to reinvent this wheel. The people who decide whether a drug gets approved in Israel is not people in parliament or in the Knesset, right? It's Israeli scientists. Right. But the government is involved in approving them. Exactly. We can emulate that, and Elon can tell us all about how we do with cars. I don't want to dwell on it. I just think this is not rocket science. We can put these standards in place, and then we can continue doing all sorts of wonderful stuff with AI tech. Some stuff we'll wait a little longer for, but it'll be worth the wait because it'll be safe. The last thing I just wanted to say is I think for us to really seize this agency and work together, not just between companies, but also across borders, we really need a shared positive vision. And this is something I really appreciate so much about you, Elon. You have the guts more than most to talk about like really audacious positive visions for the future. What is it that makes people collaborate and put little squabbles aside? It's always a shared positive vision where people realize that if we collaborate, we'll all be better off. Technology is not a zero-sum game, right? You can take countries like Sweden and Denmark that had been killing each other for centuries and flat GDP, and then technology came along and they both got dramatically better off. It's so obvious that the technology that you're building, can make all humans just spectacularly better off with AI, and not just on this planet. I like the list before we started you had there about how it can revolutionize healthcare and so many other things. And I would add to that, why limit ourselves to this planet when there's this beautiful universe where life can flourish for billions of years? If the more we can just appreciate how huge the upside is, if we do this right, the more incentive we will have to actually be a little patient where we need to be a little bit patient, make everything safe, and therefore get this wonderful future.
Well, maybe we're sort of lagging behind in our social and political developments. This is like having nuclear technology in the Stone Age. What do you do with it? Which I think is, is more or less the thing that I talked about in terms of the pace of development, outpacing basically what solutions we need to put in place to maximize the benefits and limits the risks. I think we're there.
Yep.
I think we should have a meeting of minds. You were in the Senate the other day. I presume you were talking about this. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't have to divulge what you can't divulge, but divulge what you can.
Well, there were a lot of people in the meeting, so I don't think it was secret. It was just a discussion on AI regulation, and actually Sam Altman from OpenAI was there, and a number of sort of AI leaders were there. I think generally it would be a good idea to have some kind of AI regulatory agency. And you start off with a team that gathers insight to get maximum understanding. Then you have some proposed rulemaking, and then eventually you have regulations that are put in place. And this is something we have for everything that is a potential danger to the public. So if it is Food and Drugs, we've got Food and Drug Administration, we've got aircraft with the FAA and rockets. There's every anything that is a danger to the public over time. We have learned, often the hard way, after many people have died, to have a regulatory agency to protect public safety. Now, I'm not someone who thinks that regulation is some panacea where it's only good. Of course, there are some downsides to regulation in that things move a bit slower, and sometimes you get regulatory capture and that kind of thing. But on balance, I think the public would not want to get rid of most regulatory agencies. And you can think of it also as like the regulatory agency being like a referee. What sports game doesn't have a referee? You need someone to make sure that that people are playing fairly, not breaking the rules, and that's why basically every sport has a referee of one kind or another. So that's the rationale for AI safety, and I've been pushing this all around the world. And when I was in China a few months ago, meeting with some of the senior leadership, my primary topic was AI safety and regulation. And they after we had a long discussion, agreed that there's merit to AI regulation, and immediately took action in this regard. So sometimes we'll get this comment of like, well, if the West does AI regulation, surely then what if China doesn't and then leaps ahead? And I think they're also taking it very seriously, because
Okay. Okay. We're okay. We have coffee. We've taken a couple rips. It's time to pilot my battleship, my battle station, in the process of creation of a new nation. Is it over?
also taking it very seriously.
I can't tell if it's over or if it's like delayed. They finish here? I think it finished.
But on balance, and then leaps ahead. And I think they're also taking it very seriously, because
That's a bad place to cut off. They lost feed and a bad part in the conversation, because it's always about AI trust, right? It's always about, can we trust these fucking machines? Well, I think we can if we can trust ourselves, but over the course of human history, we have not demonstrated sufficient anything in terms of trustworthiness or whatever, with rare exception. But at the same time, you have to consider the very real fact that, for what a lot of people believe is real or might not be real, might actually be real, and vice versa. Let's take Jesus, for example. A lot of people really believe in Jesus, myself included. But to what degree, right? Like, to what characteristics, to the real lived life of the man himself, the relics left behind, accounting for his historical existence, and the interpretation of events that have led from there to here in the modern day. Anyway, I'm not going to wax philosophic. It was just an idea comparing, like, people's belief systems in tangency with artificial intelligence. Logic versus feel good, like, herd, same conformity, mental, whatever. I mean, it's always nice when you find someone who agrees with you, right? But people are dangerous in large numbers when they all think the same way. Can we at least agree on this much? Can we, please? That would be nice. I don't know if I like this setup with the chat on top, or rather over here. Because of the way that I move, maybe it would make more sense for it to be on this side as opposed to this side. I don't know. Entities and time travel. Time travel and entities. First of all, how's everyone doing today? Let's see. If we need ChatGPT, we've got ChatGPT. Got CPP test in preparation for getting real unit testing rolling here, because a lot of the game works really well right now, and that scares me, honestly. That means that we're getting to a point where I actually have to do new stuff, and there's so much potential new stuff that we have to kind of figure out the low-hanging fruit. We got to figure out what's like the next step in the rung. I was. Hi, Null on 6. Null 1-6. Yes, I was. It was pretty interesting. It had Benjamin Netanyahu, who is the Prime Minister of Israel, as well as GDB, who is one of the co-founders of OpenAI. It may not even be on YouTube. Like, it might be, it might take a while for them to upload it. You know how it is. Not everyone broadcasts to all platforms simultaneously. The way it works here for me is because of Twitch's dumbass fucking affiliate, code shit. I have to first stream exclusively to Twitch, and then afterwards I can export my shit off platform if I want to. But I'm not allowed to simulcast across multiple platforms at the moment. Similarly, for that stream, they must have chosen to just stream on Twitter. And I could stream on Twitter too myself if I wanted to. But that's just the nature of the beast, man. Like, it'll probably be on YouTube later, but you have to give them time to upload it. Musk was looking pretty rough. He had like kind of a, I hate it, knock on wood, I pray to God that they don't fucking John McAfee him, because you know they fucking killed that guy. John McAfee was one of the smartest motherfuckers on the planet. Right at the peak of the 2016 drama in the politics spheres. And they fucking capped him. He died in custody. And his wife wants justice. I see her posts on Twitter all the time. I pray to God they don't do the same thing to Musk, or anyone else for that matter. But the truth needs to be out for whatever truth is out there. It is, right? Like, a lot of people think that's some kind of like conspiracy theory shit, but like, anyone can enumerate the points if they just look at the evidence. And a lot of people are in denial of the evidence. There's, like any sufficient hacker or computer security expert knows this concept of entropy. And an individual actor could get so far ahead of another actor such that that other actor could never catch up. But what if you knew that the person who's getting ahead of you was cheating and you saw them cheat their way to the top? And they're like, I caught you. I saw you. And you're like, you have any proof that I cheated? And I'm not just like moving at my natural stride? And they're like, no. But I know you did something. Similarly, they killed Anthony Bourdain, the famous cook, chef, restaurant reviewer, pot smoker, one of the best people on like left-wing platforms in general, one of the coolest people on the planet. And they took him from us because he had inside knowledge as to political corruption. Free Julian Assange if he's still alive, then recompense him and his family for all of the years of his life that are gone, that he's never going to get back. They actually acknowledged my own work inadvertently during the very beginning of my web development career. I made a website that wasn't very good, but it got a lot of attention, and it got onto the front page of Reddit, called People Okay with Murdering Assange.com. Now, the goal of the website was to catalog individuals in the public sector, politicians, governors, etc., who publicly called for the murder of Julian Assange. And I think I was first inspired by Sarah Palin, who was one of the first people to come out and be like, he needs to be fucking assassinated. And I thought that was so fucking stupid. Like my dad's side of the family being super Republican were like really kind of dick riding Palin when she was going for her, let's see, what year was that? I was like a teenager, young adult. And I try to pay attention to some things that people say, and when they say stupid things, I want to call them out on it. So I made a big website that was mimicking another website, a website that was detailing all of the different good things that Barack Obama had done during his presidency. And in a similar fashion, you could refresh the page and get a completely random name. And I had a big list of names. I had names followed with the quote, followed with who the individual was, and the source of the quote. I didn't even use a database for this. I literally kept everything in a fucking text file. Every time you hit the page, my PHP script would have to reload the file, reparse it, and then randomly select some shit from it. It's probably one of the worst ways that you could build such a website, but I didn't have to make it great because I still got 2 million fucking Google, visitor hits. We still got fucking top page of Reddit. I got death threats for that website, and someone offered me $8,000 to buy the domain. And hackers actually gave me free advice on how to fix my shit when they found very small vulnerabilities. I think someone found an injection in the page ID. They just told me all I had to do to fix it was just work with integers. It's really an easy solution for a lot of things. Don't use strings. Strings are dangerous. Integers are kind of safe. I say kind of because I could wax poetic about that too. So dude be like, I've come a long way since then. That was like late 2010. I hadn't even began learning iOS development. And yet, a friend of mine had come to me, one that I had previously made a very large Dance Dance Revolution Step Mania sim file pack with, called, his name was Archowl. Me being Dark Mage, put together a compilation of these step files that we made. 95 of them or so. Some of them we worked on together. And we called it the Archmage Dark Owl Hammer of Thor Super Ultra Hyper Mega Pack. The firest fucking, collection of sim files that you'll find. Our taste in music was impeccable. We sampled from every genre. We made steps that were doable by your average player, as well as challenge charts that really pushed the limits of the physical human form. That was actually one of my goals with my one-winged angel step chart, which is my most famous internet work. My favorite too, honestly, because I did it like in the middle of fucking waiting in between classes when I was in college. All of the knowledge that I express here now was built from somewhere, and it, I had initial energy even before this point that was put to use in what I felt at the time was the most fun and interesting thing that I could do at the moment. So I think with that spirit, a lot of what I'm going to do today is going to be done in a similar fashion. We have test cases to build. What do I need to include for a test suite? Do I need to include anything? Let's see. CPP test. But anyway, back to Musk, right? And his whole, like, him taking over OpenAI was like Meta taking over Instagram, or what used to be called Facebook. It's a smart business strategy in the tech sector to be able to take ownership of a stack. And actually, really, it's like between Tesla, OpenAI, and Microsoft Copilot at the moment. Actually, I think Microsoft owns a large share of OpenAI at this point. I don't need all this stuff. Come on now. There we go. Wait. Speaking of CPP tests, let's use ChatGPT. I need some scaffolding for my C++ games unit tests. I plan on using, I believe, the CPP test framework. Can you generate a .h and .cpp file as well as the necessary command to compile and run? Literally making artificial intelligence write code for me because too lazy. Wow, they're using if and def. That's like old hat. No, see, I'm about that pragma once. No, 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 no. Okay, wait, is that right? Game component and then game component test. Okay, so here's the test file. Um, so we're just gonna call this my test start, and it's gonna be a public unit test, CPP unit tests. Wait, hold on. There we go. I think this is correct. I'll move that stuff over into the CPP. At least this way I could split it up between two files. So then um link CPP test. No such file or directory. What? Uh apologies for lag. Darn it. I believe I had some sort of test framework for Skull going. My test suite, yes. CXX, there we go. This is what we want. We'll just actually just straight up copy. So CXX test gen would generate the runner, which then gets compiled. So here's our runner that we generate. Um, we then build a include. Hmm. Oh, that was for libstdl, but we don't need that here. Test source name. Test binary. Oh, yeah, this is old. LCPP test. Oh yeah. Hold on a sec. Let's see. We gotta also clean the runner.cpp. Hi, Web Wizard. Um, Web Wizard's been trying to get an interview with me for a while, and this motherfucker straight up asked me to record my own interview with him. The fuck is his problem? I don't know how exactly involved Musk is in OpenAI, but that was my understanding. Um, wait, what? Relocation against standard screen. Oh, I guess this is in test runner. Oh, because we're not linking. Okay, okay, okay. We're not linking in curses there. So we need to do libs and C flags. Understanding is how you help found an OpenAI early and then distance yourself from it due to competition conflicts with Tesla. Well, he's definitely got conflicts of interest across the board. A lot of people forget PayPal and eBay. And then the irony of him becoming involved in Dogecoin so many years later, briefly talking about having NFT images up on Twitter, rebranding it to X, which is the old domain he was trying to originally have for PayPal, I believe. Oh, shoot. No such option, G. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. This is not a C flags situation. Ew. Why? Do we need to link it in draw when we build draw? Are we not allowed to, or we not, oh, because we're not including it, in test runner, or in my test suite. Maybe. No. Building, love these kinds of problems. Um, so both game state and draw are making reference to incursive stuff, and for some reason the runner having trouble finding things. Now the fun part of this would be like, so I'm just straight up linking all of the objects here, but like I don't even need any of that stuff right now. Because realistically, in the actual test suite, we're not doing anything involving any of that stuff at the moment. As we introduce individual objects, we will attach them to the tests and go from there. Try to make this written in a way that's not totally insane. Okay, so we have a test runner, and when we run that test, it looks like this. Okay, so actually, if we want to do that, maybe we want to attach a new line to the front of that string. Cool. Wait. Okay. So, for instance, let's say we wanted to attach door to our test suite. Yeah, actually, I've played Crawl with a couple friends. That was a really interesting experience. It is definitely NetHack inspired. If this is your first time hanging out in Nolan 6, um, the game that I'm working on is a roguelike, top down, with NetHack inspiration and with the intent of one day getting it onto the Steam store. Obviously, not in the form where it's an ASCII game, but the way that I'm writing it, my hope is that it should be rather easy to have both an IRSA's implementation as well as a libstdl implementation. This way, we can at least target Windows, Mac, and Linux like right out the gate, and then later, start working with a bigger framework that would allow us to port to every other console and device that we can think of. All things in time, and everything starts somewhere. We have unique game mechanics. Check this out. So let me zoom in a little bit. So upstairs, downstairs, open doors, standard kind of movement. You see it's a rather empty dungeon at the moment. But, we have a certain number of floors we're able to generate, and it's all procedural. We can scale this to as many as we want in one direction or another. We've taken 63 turns. If you press the S key, lets you know that that occupies almost 3 kilobytes of memory, which is really super trivial. So in other words, we're going to start measuring like stuff happening in the dungeon and getting a sense of how much space this is going to take. Because if we can keep things in a really nice, tight space, like I hope to make a very exciting, thought-provoking action-adventure RPG with the following unique mechanic. If you press the Z key, you go back in time. Watch this. Z Z Z Z Z Z Z Z Z Z Z Z Z Z Z Z Z Z Z Z Z Z Z Z Z Z Z Z Z. So the Z key allows you to go back in time one turn. I implemented this over the last 2 streams, and I can talk briefly about how that works before we move on to really tightening things up, because the minute that we start adding things into this dungeon, it's going to start being like off the chain. We need to make sure that what we have currently works incredibly well, and I want to make sure that the code is clean and easy to extend, and that's ultimately the goal, because if it's easy to extend, we can start like really making a lot of stuff happen quickly. Before we know it, we'll actually have a need to build the libstdl version and actually do sprites. The way that the time travel in reverse works isn't that we're actually going back in time, but rather we're restarting the whole game and then replaying it up until the moment before you go back in time. So that's one of the reasons that I'm storing how many items we actually keep in the event log, or rather the event queue. You want to call it the event queue, that's fine. It's actually a vector, but same div. So every time you move, every time you open a door, every time you go up or down the stairs, that registers as an event, and we stash that event as an object in a key, like a vector. Every time we come up with a new event, so in the future, for instance, if a person pickpockets you, or if a wizard begins casting a spell, or if you trip on a trap or something, like tripping on a trap could generate another event. It could result in you dropping an item out of your inventory. Um, so, like, one single event can trigger like a further cascade of events that all happen on the same turn in a certain order. But let's say you trip and you drop every item in your inventory. Like, fuck, I wish I could undo that. Well, now you can. We'll get to that point. We don't have items in our inventory yet. We don't have a place to put them. In fact, we do have that log issue that we have to deal with. So in the draw event log, we're actually printing a whole string, and this is what's causing. This causes strings that are too long to overflow onto the next row. To do fix this. So for int I equals 0, I is less than the string length of stir, and let's see, if x is greater than or equal to the width of the screen, we need to calculate the edge of the screen. Like, where do we stop printing? So actually, we're going to be stopping, I think, 1 before the edge of the screen. So if x plus I is greater than dw minus 1, y plus plus, and then x equals the beginning of the screen again. Int x print x begin. So that's going to be a constant because it's never going to change. If you didn't want to deal with all the event stuff, you could just record the key presses made by a player and save the seed. I thought about that too, but then I have to keep track of the context of like which button they pressed, what these games like relative state might have been. Like for instance, when you press O, you then have to press a direction in order to indicate which direction you want to try and open a door in. Because what happens in the code at the moment is the handle key press is separate from the generate event. I actually did this on purpose. I added events as a layer in between handling key presses because the context for instance, a direction that you might push will change depending on why you're pushing in that direction. Like, are you moving in that direction? Are you opening a door in that direction later on? Are you trying to pickpocket in that direction? Are you trying to pick up an item? Are you trying to attack another enemy? So on and so forth. So, like, I actually separate out the handling of key presses from the generation of events, and it's not a problem because anytime we come up with a new thing that we want to happen, all we have to do is define a new event and add the appropriate key handling. Because process event actually updates the game state based off of what event it's currently handling. So I found this more sane. Like, this actually reduced my cognitive burden. So here we're going to be printing the event log messages one character at a time until we get to the end of the line, whereupon we will, just like a typewriter, go back to the beginning and continue printing the message. So this should look better, and it should also allow us to zoom in as far as we want without us having to deal with that darn cutoff problem. So let's go ahead and make string length was not declared in the scope, so it's not string length, is it? Oh, we have to include C string. Okay. I like to see that warning go away, so we're going to make that int a size t. Yeah, this only works if you replay the game from start to n-1 every time you press Z. At the moment, I have envisioned another situation where instead of actually deleting items off of the event stack every time we do this and then having to replay everything, I've considered like reversible events, like being able to generate a exact inverse of an event that happens. One potential problem with this approach, though, is that there might be events that are straight up irreversible. And figuring out how to properly handle those situations, I think, is still too early. There is a lot of potential there. But and this was partially inspired by like the concept of Git or like code repositories. And we can always serialize things and zip them and compress them if we really need to. The question is going to be like, how deep into the game are things going to start slowing down? And will we need to change the system to account for this? But at the moment, like, one event gets processed at a time, and we only need to reprocess events if you're going back. But the benefit of this is we could actually pick an arbitrary point in the past that we could return to. That's kind of nice too, right? Like, you can unwind as far as you want. We could even peak the game state at certain points. Another thing I've even considered is, and this is probably like the more ridiculous, naive approach, would be attaching the game state in a linked list, and then just every time we update the game state, add it to the new list. But like, the game state's kind of huge. Like, it's kind of got a lot on it. So, like, for instance, in the main, whenever we hit the S key, let's see, no, it's in game state now, and actually we're gonna have to move handle camera mode input over for that as well. But display event counts will print the size of the event queue. What if I also wanted to like void game state get game state size. Cool, size of this. I wonder if that'll actually work. And then over here, we could just say get game state size. It says the game state's only 104 bytes. That doesn't include the size of the objects in the game state. Well, this is a pointer to something, right? The dungeon has a number of objects in it. Player, the entity, is a certain size. See, size of this doesn't do it. Like, we actually have to compute name length equals name dot length, move size, but we should actually call this like get size. Name dot length, its size. We have size of bool plus 3 times size of int plus that plus that. And we can return that. So we need to also update the entity move .cpp .h. So this only has return size of entity movement type, which is an enum. So back over here in game state, we're going to start putting 0 right there. You tried copying game states around for asteroids when I was working on learning AI, and it was super slow. So you take the game state image and then compress it down to a tiny vector to run any efficiency. Jesus Christ, that was loud. Thank you. Appreciate it, Abundant. I need to turn my volume down so I don't blow my fucking eardrums out, though. Thanks for the follow, man. Fuck yeah. Game state, right? A lot here. Got size plus equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Size of int times 8. size of bool. Then we have size of input mode t. And we have the size of the player. Oops. Player pointing to get size. We'll have to do the same thing for dungeon, event log, events. Um, event log pointing to size times size of string. In events, we also have size t, game state, get events size. So that would just be get event size. Oh, but we would still need count. No, we would just say events pointing to size. Down here we have game state size. Maybe we just say get size. Get event size. These should be public methods. Thinking a little bit, I'll end up taking a break for lunch. So we're testing out this stuff as well as the logging mechanism right now. Verifying this stuff works, and having the C++ unit test framework started, at least is progress. I know the title of the stream says Entities and Time Reversal 2. So the ultimate goal with this is that we want to put a second entity into the dungeon, have them move around in an arbitrary way, and then be able to demonstrate time reversal in the context of multiple entities moving around. Because as it is, collision detection works fine, and we're going to have to take that into account when we add new entities. We're going to have to make it sure that entities can't necessarily overlap each other. For instance, if someone's standing in 0, 0, and I'm at 1, 1, and I move up and to the left, I should not be able to move into that space without something happening or the entity who was there being destroyed somehow, or at least moving into another location or being displaced. Again, okay, it's no longer get game state size. It's well, get size should return size. And then void game state display size, or display game state size. Void value, no. Okay, dungeon does not have get size yet. So each dungeon floor would have to get a size as well. So the dungeon floor would also need a get size. Size of int times 3 size s plus equals oh, we need the size of tile too. Tuple int times 2. Yeah. And then how many tiles? So this would get us how many tiles we're storing. We would also need to get, well, so if it has a door, then we would be able to get the size of the door. Thank you, Null, for hanging out. Have a good day, man, or woman, or human being. Not trying to make assumptions. Take it easy until next time. Let's see. So now we also have to do door. Thankfully, this one's easy. But it's already learning off of the patterns. Let's see, so this is tile type. So dungeon floor. We can now move these over. Git size returns a number of, like for every floor we grab the size, add in, and return it. And we also need to do this for every entity. In dungeon floor.cpp line 641, we forgot to return that's in door.h. C standard def. Entity move.h also needs that. Everything's built. At the moment, yeah, game state .cpp, when we hit the S key, get size, we want to do display get size. Display game state size. Okay. The game state is 234 bytes, which doesn't account for the event count. Oh, whoops. Yeah, this should actually be. This does event log plus that. So we need to do size plus equals get events size. And then now we can say we can just print the size of the game state at every step. Because every time we add a message to the event log, it's going up. So for instance, if we wanted to just tighten that up a little bit, if we wanted to, just be hyper clean about what we're writing to it, so we're only printing what's absolutely necessary. It still goes up quite a bit every time you press that key. Um, you're already using almost 3 kilobytes. But if we undo everything, sure, we got a whole bunch of messages printed to the log, but we've undone our events and it's wiped them from memory essentially. But every time we add something to the event log, the size does go up quite a bit. By like 32. 32 bytes every event log message. This is really a trivial amount of memory. I shouldn't even be fucking worrying about it. It's not going to become an issue until we get into like the megabytes or the larger than that. But we need to test the log to make sure that the the new logging printing is working sufficiently. Okay. Ooh, it's going off screen. Not good. Oh, and oops. No, wait. There we go. What? Different signedness. The DW. Get height, get width. Yeah, that's got that. It's still going off screen. Oh, greater than or equal to. Ooh. Then x needs to equal begin. X begin. No? Hmm. Oh, x is never changing. Right. Oh, it's because the I on the string, we need a separate mechanism to track the current position that we're like printing to. Um, what we should do here is say x equals x begin plus I. Um, and then we have a separate mechanism. X currents. If x of O plus I greater or equal dw, uh, let's see. So the I is like our current position. But x of 0 is an offset. Um, so this way we can use I to keep track of which character we're printing out, and then X of 0 to keep track of like where we're printing it. There we go. That's what I wanted to see. Excellent. Although it's printing too far low. If y is that, then bool end of display false. End of display equals true. If end of display, we're gonna break. And then y equals that, or end of display will break. Okay, that's pretty good. I like that. Very happy with that. I'm going to create a little function for that called game state test add random string. We need to also remove the test runner. Oops. Let's take a look at everything we changed before we commit. We did a lot just now by adding sizes to all of the relevant objects. We can actually accurately calculate how big the game is in memory at any given moment, which is really useful for tracking performance. And as I can see, I haven't been able to crack 1 megabyte yet. So one of the goals is to be able to like randomly do stuff in the game state from the test file during unit testing so that we can measure the size of the game state over time and eventually deal with any potential issues that might arise. The next big thing on the to-do, although today was not accurately titled, later on I will continue by adding an entity, like a second non-player entity that both moves randomly around the dungeon and moves randomly around the dungeon, as well as another entity that just like either moves back and forth, moves towards the player, or moves in an arbitrary direction. One of the cool things that we can do with the time unwind mechanism is have entities that are able to violate causality. I'd be able to test to see if you pressed go back in time, right? Because currently it deletes all of the events from the previous turn and then replays the universe from the beginning up to that point. So if you press that and then you find yourself one turn into the past, there could be like a wizard who gets an additional action on top of you, right? So this would create a sense of urgency if you make regular use of the time travel mechanism and like you weren't able to deal with something like that, or rather had to figure out how to think not only additional steps into the future but in a non-linear way. So I have ideas for ways that we can really do cool things with this, that we're going to have to experiment with. And it's going to begin with placing other entities in the dungeon that we can interact with. Because then we can start considering stats. We can start considering turn order. We can start considering items and equipment, non-living entities, or rather items and objects. We want to get some Sokoban kind of mechanisms where you have stones that you can push across onto the floor. We want to have floor switches that when you step on them open doors or do some other sort of mechanism. We want traps, like or switches or traps, additional entities that move randomly back and forth, circular patterns, items, equipment, stats / attributes such as strength, dexterity, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, constitution. Very D&D, right? D&D 3.0 was kind of like where a lot of my inceptions for a lot of this stuff, because I played 2.5 briefly, but then 3.0 came out, and that was like where, I actually read the books. I read both the player's handbook and the DM's manual, which I definitely could use copies of again. I know I have them access to online, but one thing at a time. Unit tests. Non-incurses. Clients. Manipulate the game state from outside of incurses in order to facilitate game state simulation from the unit test. Memory measurements via bit size. All right, let's push this baby. Break time, everyone. Get some food, get some lunch, get some grub.